Has your child ever screamed and yelled inside a store because he wanted you to buy him something? Or are you tempted yourself to indulge your child with lavish gifts that she doesn't need or you can't afford? Instead of simply saying yes or no to spending, perhaps it's a good time to teach your child about money and the responsibilities that go along with it. Here with some tips on raising financially responsible children is Joan Cunningham-Moskowitz, a financial consultant and mother. And that is an excellent team pairing there in terms of being a mother. You've been through it. You've got 2 children of your own. And you've got some tips and techniques for us on being able to talk to our children about money.
Well, I think that I have to tell you, though, the first time, you say how soon do you teach them or when do you teach them, it's never too young to start. And when my child was just learning to walk, I have older brothers and sisters, they were talking about their children going on dates, and they were saying they weren't sure their kids knew how to figure out a check or leave an appropriate tip. And I said to myself, I'm never going to be one of those parents
That's never going to happen.
Whose kid is not comfortable with money. Mm-hmm. And so I started at a very young age, and my children are now 20 and 17. I have a junior in college and a senior in high school. And I think this summer I saw some real growth in them that I think really tells me that what I taught them and what my husband and I
evidence that the teachings have stuck with them.
And been successful and been the right things.
Mm-hmm.
I think that in terms of a very young child, it's probably a good idea to begin to teach them. They get gifts from grandparents. They get gifts from their aunts and uncles. Sometimes they don't like them. They're not going to use them. Is it okay to take those back to the store? I think it is. I think it is okay. Sometimes you may want to check with the giver if it's a close family member. But
Sure.
When you get a lot of multiples or things that they're not going to wear, I think it's okay. And then you walk into the store, and then you have the situation you described in your opening remarks. Are they screaming for something else?
Sure.
I think it's important to teach them that you can exchange it there and get it, or you can get a store credit, or you can get some kind of cash for it, and you don't necessarily have to plow that right back in to another purchase or another gift.
Right, and that's where the idea of finances comes in. The idea of introducing to them, you don't need to spend the money now. It shouldn't be burning a hole in your pocket, and what is the value of it? What can you get for this amount of money?
Well, a lot of times they're saying, oh, Mom, they want whatever the latest thing is that they've seen on TV. And even children as young as, how young? As young as 4, 5.
Sure.
Know what's being advertised to them.
And it's not just television anymore.
Exactly. There are so many more ways that kids are bombarded by this. The Internet. I mean, 5-year-olds maybe aren't on the Internet so much. But you hit that middle school age and you're there, and we should talk about middle school. But initially, the young children, they see it on TV. But now you can't even take them to a movie that there isn't, 10 minutes of commercials before movie. And so they see, and that's all the tie-ins to the films, that's the stuff they want.
So if they're seeing marketing and they're seeing products targeted at them that they want, that they're asking for, then that's a sign to you. Yes, it's time to talk to them about money because they need to know the value of that, to understand the value of what they're getting.
Right, and I think and I want to tell you that it's not just about, look, we all want to provide for our children what they want.
Sure.
But it's also, I think one of the very first lessons you need to teach them is how to buy it for themselves. Mm-hmm. Because, now you say they have that money burning a hole in their pocket. I think you want them to be able to, say, okay, well, how much is it? And what is this you want? And let's count what you have. Let's see how much money you have, and let's see if it's enough. If it's not, well, maybe you need to go home and we need to add some more to it. Maybe you
Now, is that where allowances might come in?
Well, allowances could come in there. I mean, well, we were talking a little bit before, and I was telling you that, some families give allowances to their children with no strings attached. My husband grew up that way. I didn't. I grew up that you had chores to do, that you can earn it.
And this is an excellent, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I did want to point out that this is an excellent example of where parents need to share their experiences with money with each other before they begin to present a unified front to their children? Because you were saying your husband was a city kid, you were the country kid, you came together, and when it came to allowances, you had different concepts.
Absolutely.
Of what that meant.
And I think you're absolutely right. Parents need to talk, and, I would tell you that in all things, parents should have a common front. This is a really big and dicey subject. Money is probably one of the top subjects that causes stirrings in the house.
Oh, yeah.
And, more heated discussions. But you really, I think for your children, you should have a unified front, or you should at least have an approach that each of you is comfortable with. My husband was able to, wanted to give them an allowance that they could just have. But it was their choice how they spent it. It was just kind of free money. I, on the other hand, wanted them to do certain things. So to get around that, I came up with a list that has, I want to say, rewards attached to it. Mm-hmm. And some of those rewards were monetary, and some of them might be something that they saw in the store that I thought was, reasonable price, but that would have to be earned. And so they would have to do certain chores above and beyond just maybe emptying the dishwasher or walking the dog or
Sure.
feeding the dog. These would be things above and beyond.
And that can be individual to each family, to each couple, but as long as you are introducing the idea of value of money and that perhaps you can earn something, or perhaps, most importantly, you can hold on to something.
That's true.
You were mentioning the difference, too, as they get a little bit older and they're starting to learn about money, introducing debit versus credit cards, which was very interesting.
That's true. Credit cards were really the thing. Even really as my children were growing up. Now debit cards are really more popular. And I think a debit card or the gift card, any of those cards is a good thing for children to practice on because they have fixed limits.
Sure.
And you can go into a store and you say, well, you just don't have enough money. And this is a really good place in the kind of the middle school age to introduce choices. You say to them, well, maybe you can't have the deluxe version of whatever that game is. Maybe you need to, to wait and buy something else. Maybe you need to wait. There's a lesson there. Maybe you need to buy something cheaper, maybe an alternative altogether, or maybe you need to just walk out of the store and wait and earn the money. Let's go back home. Let's look at the list. Let's see what you can do to earn the money. Mm-hmm. But I think, with middle school children, the work ethic is important. Mm-hmm. The effort versus the reward. And
Certainly.
That's, I think, what you're really trying to get to.
Definitely.
There is value in hard work, mm-hmm. and it provides things you want, because that's the long-term life lesson we really want them to go home with.
Sure, and you don't want them to go home with the idea that all of a sudden they're accumulating debt either, Well,
they don't even see the debt. A credit card is really a danger because it's instant gratification, but the bill doesn't come till next month. Mm-hmm. My children both had summer jobs this year, and my son had a little bit of an accident. He was camping and off-roading with the car and that he uses, and he broke a wheel and 2 tires, which was going to be a thing. He does have a credit card for emergencies like that because he was alone, and mm-hmm. he did use it. Which he called reasonable. The AAA. He did all the things he was supposed to do. Mm-hmm. He did call us and tell us, but he did have to come up with the money to pay for all that. Now here's a great lesson that came out of that. What you would think would be an awful thing. He had to replace the tires immediately because he needed to drive home. But he had to replace the wheel, and a wheel new would be $250. He got it online. Here we go, shopping online, and all of a sudden it was $150. And I said to him, well, what about these wrecking places? He got it down to $75, which is the one he bought. He was so happy.
And that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for being able to teach our children the value of the dollar so that when they grow up, we see examples of what they've learned and that they're getting the best for their money. Right?
And he's 17, and he still needs his parents to help guide him through that process. I think you still do. Our daughter is 20, and she was buying a new car, her first car this summer. Yeah. And, she needed help in learning to negotiate and learning to go and shop the car she wanted.
And I remember you telling me that instead of going for the automatic transmission, she went for the manual. Talk about knowing the value of the dollar. Thank you so much, Joanne. I really appreciate having you here.
It was my pleasure.
A lot of good information.